Welcome back to another episode of Pass the Tots podcast of all things food service. I am super excited today. Evan Wilson, Texas Tech Hospitality, the man. First maybe like I met you at a NACOPS Regional. You were given an amazing presentation around social media and Texas Tech dining, everything that it is. Had to get you on the podcast. Thank you, Evan, for coming.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here and just talk about things that I do in my job and things that that I really, really am passionate about every day. Yeah.
Well, look, Texas Tech, Lubbock, Texas, kind of an anomaly. It's a little bit out there. How is the dining program? How is the dining program at Texas Tech so phenomenal and so renowned across the country?
So it has to start with our people more than anything. I started with hospitality services in 2011 as a student. I was just a line worker, and they found out I could make some videos, so they brought me over to the training facility, and I made some videos for them. But that kind of just feeds the spirit of what hospitality does. They like to train and develop their employees. Our director actually used to be a cook for the department. Kirk Rodriguez is an amazing director, and it's his vision that's kind of grown this department. And really, since 2011 to now, we've just grown leaps and bounds. And we're out in the middle of nowhere, but if you come to school at Texas Tech, you're gonna know a few things, and you're gonna eat some really good food.
That's phenomenal. So it sounds like a lot of people start there, they go there, and then they just become part of the family, and they no doubt they're part of the hospitality program.
Yeah, it's if I counted just within the marketing area, which we handle recruitment, we handle merchandising, printing. We have our own printing facility here in house for our marketing team. But my boss, Alan, Amy, Dee, and even just those four in our group, they all started as students. So you can kind of see the development happening there, and we all started in different areas and at different times. My boss started back when there was a lot more all you care to eat on campus, and it was a lot more traditional. And he's kind of seen that evolution to more of that hybrid program that you're seeing now with franchises and all you care to eat to give the students as much variety as possible.
That's awesome. Now, you call yourselves Texas Tech Hospitality Dining. Hospitality is a part of it. Is there a reason or a story why you make hospitality part of the brand, the name?
So
you may not.
It was at one point housing and dining before two of those departments that we still work really closely with. We work really, really closely. We house right next to housing on campus here at Texas Tech. But when those two departments had enough work to kind of call themselves their own departments, they split up, and hospitality was the name that everybody landed on. And I might not be exactly right on this, but we do so much more than dining. We want to make this place feel like home. We work in conjunction with a lot of different departments on campus to try and make that as as homey as possible. And food is a language everyone speaks. It's communal in the best sort of way, and we think hospitality kind of encompasses everything that you need to feel like home when you come to a campus. So we do get it confused a lot. We get a lot of calls for hospitals and everything else, and luckily we can pass them along to the right resources there. But we are dining on campus, and hospitality services encompasses that.
Yeah. Okay. So quick side story. My father is the executive director of dining at Brigham Young University.
Okay.
And on his campus, when you go there, they have they have one food item that is super popular. It's called a cougar tail. Okay. And it's essentially an elongated maple bar. And I guess you can only find them like this size. You only find them there. They sell them at the sporting events. They're super popular. That's what they're known for, their cougar tails.
Sure.
I stroll onto campus at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
What is the unique food item, in any part of the dining program where it's like, if you're going to try one thing, you need to try this famous food item that we're popular for?
So that's a question. We actually talked about this not that long ago with some people over in the main facility of marketing and communications for the entire university. They were asking us some questions, and we had two different answers, which is not surprising. I think it depends on where you live on campus is what's going to be your favorite item. But we do a lot of recruitment events, like I was just kind of talking about a little earlier, and the number one thing we get asked about from parents who attended Texas Tech was the Rice Krispie treats, and there's a few places on campus that sell them. But they are all homemade, and they're about as big as your head. Honestly, they're huge. But no more times than not, and I can't even count how many times it's happened. We get asked about those Rice Krispie treats by all the parents, and it's one of the favorite items here on campus.
I almost feel like every dining program at every university needs to have like that item that they just do bigger, better than everybody else, and they almost becomes like a calling card.
I think so. I think, like I said, I'm a big fan. I'm just not a sweets person, so we have a few things on campus that I would say I'm going to, but I'm just overall that's probably generally what people would ask for here on campus if they've been here before.
I'm an alumni of the University of Texas down in Austin, and I would have said, those tortillas are everywhere, and especially when you're beating up on the Texas Longhorns, the tortillas find themselves on that football field.
Yeah,
but that's another story for another day.
Sure. Yeah, we really resonate with the tortilla here, so we have lots of stories, and we use that to our advantage, even with our department. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, Evan, before we jump into the conversation today, maybe just take a minute about your background, because it's definitely not necessarily a food background. You grew up with technology and new technology, social media, and all that. So introduce us to your area of expertise and how you came to be here at the dining program with Texas Tech.
Sure. So I went to school at Texas Tech. I started, a long time ago. It doesn't seem like that long ago until I start doing the math. But I grew up in West Texas, in the San Angelo and Ballinger area. And when I came to school, I had a focus on electronic media and communication. That's what my degree is for. And I left to go to New Mexico to study film for a little while. So this is something from a video and digital media and marketing side that I've kind of known I've wanted to be and do for a very long time. I run a business, a production studio outside of Texas Tech as well, that I've been doing since I was in college as well. But as I alluded to earlier, I was just a college kid trying to make some money for tuition, and dining was hiring. So I became a fry cook, and I did some stir fry for a little while, made a mean quesadilla, and I did that for probably a year and a half, 2 years. Before one of my managers asked me if I had my own camera and I could make my own videos, and I said, yeah, I do that every day. So I went over to the training facility, and they hired me as a student manager over there, and made some real cheesy training videos to try and keep things lively. Training videos can only be so fun. You still got to get the information out there. But the marketing area here, it caught their attention, and they saw the potential there. And it took some time, because this position's never been anything within hospitality services. So they brought me over on the marketing side, and I do all their photography. We do studio photography. This facility that I'm in right now, it used to be a conference room, and we've redesigned it completely. And it's a photography studio. It's a video studio. We do all of our social media videos in-house. We do interviews in-house. Everything that we used to pay an agency to come in and do for us at the beginning of the year, we do all in-house. So I have a team of students and assistants, and so we do anything from we do broadcast advertising for the department. We're doing radio advertisement on from in here. We're doing all of our recording, and then social media. That's going to be one of the biggest chunks of my day is coming up with a plan and executing for social media. So I have a lot of hats here at Texas Tech, but it's something that I've known I've wanted to do for a very long time. So it fits me really well.
And they're super lucky to have you. So you give this presentation on social media at Texas Tech. I was blown away, and maybe this is a good place to start, just around the thoughtful way in which you segment the different personas, the different customer types, everything from freshmen all the way up to seniors, right?
Mhm.
But then also thinking through parents, graduated students. I mean, it almost felt like there was a thoughtful strategy for each one of these groups. Talk to us a little bit about that. Where did that come from, and put it together for us?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you thinking of it from a generational standpoint is kind of where you need to start, because when I was tasked with social media, it's rule number one in marketing is knowing your audience, and that's almost impossible in a college setting, just because you have people coming in who maybe didn't go to college right outside of high school, and they're coming back to finish their degree, or you have athletes who have been here for 5 to 6 years. You have that new first year student who would be considered Gen Z. You have me on the tail end of people my age still getting their PhDs who are considered millennials. So you've got a very diverse group, all encompassing. We're still talking to their parents. We're still talking to Generation X. We're still talking to some boomers. So our audience was very, very large, and we needed to focus on our largest portion, which was Gen Z at this point, our first year students, all the way till from our freshmen all the way to our seniors. So for us, that's going to be the largest audience that we're trying to capture every day, and the platforms that they're using. So your Instagrams, your TikTok, and your YouTube. When you look at it from a parent standpoint, Facebook, and it's kind of increasing on the Instagram side, probably not as much as Instagram would like, but Facebook is still going to be a huge place where that audience is going to be looking for communication. They're looking for updates on their kids and their schooling. Twitter is something that is, well, it's changing right now, due to the ownership changes and everything else. So it's been very interesting to see what's tracking well on Twitter. But we still use it because it's the most efficient way to communicate if we have an emergency situation on campus, if there's a weather delay, if there's anything that needs just straight copy. We don't need a photo. We don't need anything else. So Twitter still plays an important role for us. So what we need to do is target each one of these audiences on a different medium, and be calculated in the way that we're putting information out there.
How long did it take to kind of think that through, or was that just part of your educational background?
So it really just it started with Instagram, because that was when I first came into this role. It was me and another person who were looking at our social media, and what we wanted to figure out was, we put a lot of things on social media, what is getting engagement and what's not. And that person ended up getting another job and leaving. So it ended up being my task to kind of look at it from the outside, not be in a rush, and figure out what's not working. And very quickly I realized that, before me and this last person got into this role, it was very much kind of a net approach, throw out a net and see what we can catch. And what we needed to do was much more targeted, where we weren't posting just for the sake of posting. And I have a graphic here that, it shows engagement from a standpoint of, your post count in correlation with your like count. And sure. I went all the way back to 2014, and that's a long way, but we were posting over 200 times in 2014 just for the entire thing. And yes, I had to go back and count and average all these out. But we were getting less than 5 likes. So on each post, over 200 posts, that's a very net approach. And so when 2018 is kind of when I started transitioning into this role in partnership, and we took our posts all the way down to dip below 100 posts, but our average likes was up to 50. So we were almost completely upside down on that metric that we were using, because we were being so much more thoughtful in our approach. So the way we started was targeting the one social media platform that was gaining any kind of traction, and figuring out how we could expand success there other places.
That's awesome. And it evolves to the point where Facebook for you is for parents, right? Facebook is for mom and dad.
It is. Facebook is for parents and for grandparents at this point.
But what I also find interesting there is that as you've understood the different segments and the personas in each of these platforms, your content changes. So you're going to post different types. It's not like the same content across all the channels and hope that it gets lots of likes. It's, Facebook, because we're talking to parents, these are the things that matter to mom and dad.
Mhm. So, for instance, when we're talking on Facebook, it's going to be a lot more parent forward as far as when we're talking about financial changes. So if, for instance, a student has 20 class days to change that dining plan on campus, which is it's a big ask. It's a big question for parents. So that's something that we're very forward facing on our Facebook channel, and we communicate that with emails and every other marketing tactic that you can think of. But that's the audience that's going to be kind of absorbing that and reminding their kids, hey, I really need you to log in with me so that we can change this dining plan. On Instagram, we have, for instance, right now we have a whole campaign on wholesale ordering from one of our locations on campus. They can use their phone if they've got a little bit of extra dining bucks, and they don't want that to expire or go down to 70% if they're using in the rollover. They can use a wholesale on our app to buy in bulk and pick up, so you can spend down all those dining bucks. So that's going to be very, very targeted to our Gen Z audience. It's very Instagram heavy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the other thing I remember that was interesting, you are not afraid of, end of the year, and you get a lot of people that unsubscribe.
Yeah, it's actually kind of built in to the system. One of the things about being a dining facility or a dining department for a university setting is that in any university, you want your kids to graduate. That's part of success with being a part of a university setting. So it's fully expected for students to unfollow us when they graduate, just because we're not the main university page. We're not athletics. We're not football, baseball, women's basketball. You name it. Any successful part of campus that if you went to A&M or Texas, you'd be the same way. You'd follow the sports and what you're interested in, maybe your school, but dining's probably not on that list. So we expect a lot of attrition. We have a very aggressive, targeted approach when we recruit, and it's because we have close to 7,000 new students every year, give or take right now, and we want to capture as much of that as we can. And right now we're averaging probably 1 to 300 unfollows a semester, which is better. I fully expect more than that because we have a lot more people graduating. It's going to happen. I know that. My approach is that I've got to capture that one part of the audience and talk to them for 4 years. I got to communicate with them for 4 years.
That's great. I mean, so you embrace the unfollows, and then it spikes back up at the end of the summer when the new students are enrolling, and they come to all the recruitment events, all the new events, and they see your stuff and they love it. Let's transition, talk a little bit about Gen Z. So look, this group, these are your students. They're number one. You focus on them. I think what I know about this generation is that they've grown up with technology at the touch of a finger. They have been afforded tools to create content from a very, very early age. It's not uncommon for them to not just have social media, but to be content creators. How have you kind of leveraged that unique characteristic about this generation for your benefit of the dining program?
So very early on in taking on this task with hospitality, it was very clear that, as much as I love the camera and as much as I love, making things and editing things, this audience has no interest in seeing me on camera at all, because I'm not their age. I'm not a peer. So it was something that I knew very, very quickly that we've got to find some communicators, some content creators that can deliver our message in a way that will actually be received. Kids nowadays, the Gen Z audience knows exactly what an ad looks like. And quite frankly, if I'm talking to you on a phone, it looks like an ad. And if a peer is reaching out to them, and maybe they're not even directly talking about hospitality services, maybe they're mentioning some things that we have going on while talking about what's going on in their life and talking about what's trending. Those are things that matter to our audience. Those are things that are going to resonate. And it doesn't matter if I shout from the rooftops that we have bulk and wholesale ordering from the market right now. If I'm not delivering it where students are, if I'm not delivering it in a manner that Gen Z is going to receive, nobody's listening. So finding content creators, and in my presentation, I actually found the statistic that says that one in four Gen Z actually identify as a content creator. Whether they actually work for anyone or do it for themselves is another debate, and they actually say they can't confirm or deny that. But that's how they identify, because they see themselves as creating content every day. They've had a phone in their hands since, way before me and you did. And to their benefit, they know how to use it much, much better than me and you. Not to drag you down with me. I assume you're probably in the camp with me. But
I'm not a content creator.
So my students, we have 3 different content creators on campus that we've hired, and they do everything from vlogging for us, long format vlogging on YouTube. YouTube's kind of an enigma where you can still use long format content and it still gets some tread. It takes longer, however, it can last longer as well than the quick spikes that some of the other platforms offer. They also make our reels and our posts on Instagram. They're going to be handling kind of some of the planning. We all meet once to twice a week to plan out our entire month. Right now, actually, I'm missing our meeting right now, so I'm breaking the rules. I have one of my student managers taking over, and I gave them a whole list of agenda that we needed to kind of go over. But that's really how we do it. Is we have our content creators on the same page with us, and we're very, very calculated in what we're creating content for.
That's awesome. And to any of our listeners, if you haven't seen some of this content, you need to go over Texas Tech Hospitality Services. Your handle across the board is Eat at Texas Tech, right?
Eat at Texas Tech, yes, sir.
Eat at Texas Tech. You need to see some of these reels because it's just unreal. The content that's created. I mean, it's phenomenal around how these students play in. Just things that are happening in the culture, being able to layer on top of that a connection to the dining program. It's absolutely brilliant.
I appreciate you saying that. It's something that we're going to make a lot of mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes in the past, and it's just a risk that you have to take to try and capture your audience. But it is something that we try very, very hard to have fun with our students. To make it an enjoyable experience. To follow us is not just for information. To follow us is to have fun with us with food. And we're going to put our message in there at the same time, but we're using the same trends that every other kid is seeing on their timeline. We want to fit into that timeline. We want to be funny. We want to be engaging and informative all at the same time.
That is so good. To follow us is not just to be spoken to. It's to have fun and enjoy the experience of college dining together. Yeah. That's really cool. Can we share some of your contact information? I don't know if I want to ask the questions, but I'm sure everyone out there is like, okay, well, so you've got this team. They go out and create all this amazing content, playing with the memes, like everything that's there, and then making connections. What is the process? What are the rules? How do you engage with them? How do you pay them? All of that. So maybe I could just provide contact information and they can hit you up if they have more information around how that is done. That is awesome though.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
okay.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, I just meant that, we've taken from a lot of different departments here on campus and even other universities. So what we have is a culmination of what we've been given. So we're happy to share with other partners and, anything like that we can help out on.
That's awesome. So like when I grew up, social media and even when I was in charge of social media here at Nutrislice, it was just like, check it off the list. I just got to publish something. I got to push some content out there. Sure, I was probably talking into just a blank space. I think you've taken it kind of next level and saying there's this data layer, there's analytics, and we need to actually look at these things and improve and make decisions. So could you take a minute or two and just talk about how you analyze the data of these marketing campaigns and this outreach?
So, from an analytics standpoint, it's something that there's a lot of different platforms online for you to subscribe to that, and I'm not disparaging any one of them. I'm sure that they're great. I've only ever used one, and I found personally that taking the 30 to 45 minutes out of my Monday morning. The first thing when I get into the office is going into each platform and using the analytics that are internal on each platform. So your Facebook, your YouTube, and your Instagram. I plug all of those numbers I do it week by week. So basically, I take 30 to 45 minutes and I have a spreadsheet. Actually, I have the spreadsheet open right now, just in case I wanted to pull a quick number or anything like that. But I see what's working. Basically, as I referenced earlier, I count all the likes. I average that out. However, likes aren't that great for analytics nowadays. What's great and what I really care about are your shares, are your saves. Those are things that kids are going to be, sharing with their friends. They're going to come back to it later. They saved it. So things like that I can track internally with Instagram and with Facebook and with YouTube. Really, our viewership duration. That's going to be the biggest analytic there is when did I lose them? Because long format videos, it's really easy to lose your audience with Gen Z at least. And so these internal analytics are what I'm going to be looking for. Like I said, there's a number of websites who culminate all these analytics into one. I haven't found one that met my needs exactly. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I just prefer getting into the program. Facebook is going to know its algorithm better than anyone else. Instagram is going to know its algorithm better than anyone else. So from an internal standpoint, it doesn't take as long to just see what I need to see. Those are metrics internally that I feel like get missed on other platforms.
And how do you evangelize like the success or the metrics internally? I'm guessing there's meetings and people are probably really interested. Hey, what's coming down the pipeline with our social media? And
Sure.
Was this a good, talk about that.
So when we meet weekly, I go over, we may have had, let's say for example, let me go into a random week here. So in 2022, this is an older one, sorry, our most viewed reel had 6,000 views, right? But we had an average viewership of 3,000. So for our 4 reels that week, that's a pretty good week in my opinion, just because we had an average viewership in this 1 week higher than we did all of 2021 probably combined. So I mean, when you look at our stories, we're averaging out at around 20. That was something that I wanted to increase for 2023. We have a lot more announcements than anything else that we don't want to post about, we don't want to put a reel about. So that's going to be going into our story. So really being calculated on which week is the right week to put this on our story, and making sure that our viewership with story stays around 1,100. That's the average. And the low end of that is around 500. So if you're getting closer to that number, it's time to scale that back. So it's really all about communicating and seeing what the students like and what they don't like. I ask that a ton. There's a rule when you first start. I actually just hired a content creator that says there are no stupid ideas. There's none, because you don't know if it's going to work until you talk it out. There's a lot of things that I pitch to my students and they look at me like, I'm not going to say that's not going to work, Evan, but that's not going to work. And that's fine. What I want to do is get the ball rolling. What I want to do is spur along the conversation to what will work. What have you seen on your timeline that made you laugh out loud? What made you watch the entire video? Those kind of conversations are going to play a huge part into our planning. And then on the back end, when I'm able to see what that conversation produced for that week, I can go back to our analytics and said, we really spent a lot of time on this reel and we got no engagement. All right. So what can we learn from that? We can learn a whole lot. Maybe it was too long. Maybe we used the wrong phone. We have a newer phone that has a nicer camera. Maybe the music, it can be as simple as the music wasn't connected to the trending music. Right? You've got the same music, but it's not the same. It's not on the same algorithm. So a lot of these kind of play into our meetings, and the back end on analytics, I can really congratulate those ideas that are going to be playing well with our audience.
That's awesome. It just feels like there's a really strong balance between being numbers driven, measuring performance, and at the same time, it sounds like you spark a lot of creativity, a lot of active discussion around like what is possible.
It's definitely a balancing act. I have a group of very, very talented kids who work really hard, and they all have their different style. And I've told them from day one that I don't want you to change your feed. I don't want you to change your timeline on your personal accounts. I don't want you to go follow a whole bunch of food accounts. I want you to follow who you want to follow. I want your ideas to come from what you're watching, because you're our audience. You're my biggest test sample that I can get on a regular basis of what you're watching, what you're consuming, and what you're eating. Really, that really translates to what we're trying to convey to students is, what are you eating? What are you interested in when it comes to dining, and how can we make it better? These things are all going to play an important part to what we're, at the end of the day, we want to sell, Chick-fil-A. We want to sell these things. However, we want to do it in a very, very pleasant way. We want to do it just like Chick-fil-A when we say it's our pleasure,
The tip of the tongue.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, so when you measure performance improves, you look at analytics, one of I think the way that everything improves is because you can start to pick out themes and patterns. What social media, as you've analyzed just all sorts of content for the dining program, what are some of the buckets, if you wanted something to pop, what are some of the best practices there that maybe you might be willing to share?
So let me understand your question just a little better. Sorry. You're saying, like, when I'm planning out a post, what are some of the best practices to make sure that it's successful?
Well, so let's say you look at your analytics, right?
Sure.
And you're assessing, okay, like what's going to get the views, the likes, the shares,
okay,
all that content. And you probably see general patterns and themes. Like if we post or create content around this type of theme or with these elements, we tend to do better.
Sure.
In terms of getting shares. And I'm guessing you can start to pick out some of the puzzle pieces that, like, if we do content in this genre, this way, it's going to be received well with this Gen Z audience that we're serving here.
Sure. No, I think that depending on the platform, if you're on TikTok or Instagram, starting with the sound is number one. A lot of our content where we're trying to relate with students and using and being where they're at and having themes and trends of where they're at to fit into their timeline, as it were, is all going to start from a trending sound. And the biggest piece of advice I can give somebody on a trending sound is, hey man, you got to scroll on your phone. You've really got to see what's funny, what's not funny, what's got likes, what doesn't have likes. And that, sometimes it's swimming in the ocean of social media, man. It takes some time, and having a team definitely helps there. That's where kind of divide and conquer really kind of takes over. From a YouTube standpoint, it really just becomes something where you're being proactive. Obviously, we want to be proactive in all platforms, but YouTube more so. It's been successful since 2006, and we really haven't seen that in any other social media medium. So being proactive in your planning and in your coordinating. For example, we just had a video drop that's called Spring Switch Up, and it's right before finals here at Texas Tech. And our vlogger has been talking about this for probably 4 or 5 months, where this is that tiny period before dead day and study day where students are just like at their wits' end. And it's basically, this video was dropped at this time specifically because we wanted to offer up some very, very easy ideas on how to switch up your spring and how to brighten up, this little time before finals and in summer, which is really exciting. And so Facebook is the same way. We want to be very, very proactive. Instagram and TikTok are trend-based, and you're going to be able to get your communication on your posts and your stories. But those things don't do near as well if you're not on trend with your Reels and your TikTok videos. So that's the best piece of advice I can give. It's probably too long, but yeah.
No, that's great. I thought that was awesome. So, like, one of the most important things in some of these, depending on the channel, but the ones that Gen Z is using is getting the sound right. Yeah. You actively push your content creators, like, you got to scroll. You need to see the challenges. You need to see the dances. You need to see, like,
yeah.
I mean, I'd be darned if you haven't had a conversation in the past 2 weeks about the Peaches song from Super Mario Brothers, right? Like,
Peaches,
you just have to know.
yeah.
Like,
there's I mean, it's all pop culture, and what's going to be on my phone isn't necessarily what's going to be on my students. I still bring up things because there's some things that cross those generational lines. However, I trust their judgment, and we make a ton of stuff that never goes on the timeline, and that's not supposed to be a hurtful thing. It's not supposed to be a choosy thing. It's just what fits our timeline this week, and we want to be in the habit of making content, whether it gets used or not. It keeps us fresh. It keeps us active.
You reject a lot of content then from
we
your
reject
creators.
Quite a bit, and even from myself, there's a ton of stuff that I submit. I mean, I told you earlier, my students sometimes look at what I made and like, how do we tell them this is no good? But that's the mark of the beast, man. Like if you've ever made content before, if you've ever done it independently, I make things outside of work all the time that I look at for hours, and I hate. If I take a break from it, I come back and that's not that bad. And then you have some things that you're really, really attached to emotionally, and somebody else watches it and they're like, What we want is a consensus. We really want the best for our timeline. And the only way to get your best is to continue making, continue creating, and it just takes practice. And that failure, springboards you forward.
That's awesome. Just continuous adjustments. And you probably have a whole host of content that never makes it. You should maybe put together a reel at the end of the year of like, something at the end of the all the things that didn't make it, and it's like the greatest hits album.
We have a whole like bloopers album that we share that internally, just because it's fun for our students when they all go their separate ways for the summer. We can have a blooper reel for everybody to kind of look at. It's on a private link on YouTube, so that's something that we've done in the past. I need to actually put one together for this year. We've been a little better about being efficient this year because we've had some students that have been with us for 2 years, 3 years now. So they're not making as much. They're not making as much content that gets rejected as they did when they were first year students. I just hired a few students, so we're gonna have a little bit more of that coming out, in our folders and our OneDrive. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that we have in store for like next semester. But yeah, the content behind the scenes is always really fun for our kids.
I think that's fascinating. I would have never guessed. In my personal content creation life, everything that I've created has made it to the socials. Maybe I need to look at this. I doubt that, but maybe I think that's a helpful thing. Knowing that like, hey, let's create content. That's the goal. Let's keep creating, keep producing, but we also have to have a very high standard of what actually makes it out there. That's good.
Sure.
So, social media takeovers. What is this? This is super cool. So, teach us.
So, social media takeovers. We've done a few different we've done some takeovers with some vendors on campus, like Hormel. Hormel's a great example. They have a great team, and they came down and they brought a guest chef. And they did kind of a line takeover of one of our units. It's called Sam's West, and they already serve pizzas on that line. What Hormel wanted to do was kind of come in and showcase some really, really cool products and maybe some toppings that students don't get on the norm. And so they brought in this guest chef. They made all sorts of delicious cuisine, and we showcased these new toppings. And what that vendor gets to see is what students are actually eating. They get a real number at the end of the day, and so do we as marketing folks. We get a real number at the end of the day of what students ate the most of, what they ordered the most of, what was most intriguing for them. So from a social media standpoint, it's super exciting because you bring in this whole fresh perspective. You bring in a new set of eyes on somebody else's social media coming in and their ideas on what you can do for your timeline and promoting what they're trying to do. But from the dining side, talk about freshening up and switching it up for a day or 2 days, depending on the event, where, students are going to be able to eat something that they've probably never tried. Maybe they've never even thought of. I mean, one of the products we did last year was hot honey on a pepperoni pizza. It's awesome. It's really, really good. And some people know about it and it's like, yeah, done that forever. But most people that I talk to have never tried that. And it was a killer that day.
So this is actually so let me just break this down because this is great. So, I mean, vendors definitely want to sell more of their products.
Sure.
They're definitely heard of ways where they come in, maybe take over a line, maybe bring in a chef, and offer these things. And this is just like that next level is, hey, not only do we want to do this, but we also want to bring some social content
Hmm.
and kind of run a digital platform as well, as we're doing the in-person event. And that's pretty cool. So it's to all the vendors out there, they probably need to up their game and think like, how can we truly support in the spirit of partnership and help them move things along? And maybe, we need to support and become content creators ourselves.
Sure. I mean, you're as national brands, your audience is so large for the most part, so large on social media, and so it's really easy to. For me, I'm from the outside looking in. I think it would be really easy to look at our audience as small fries, which comparatively speaking, we're talking to a smaller audience than they are. However, you're going to build relationships with people who are not going to unfollow you after graduation. So a lot of
Yeah.
these relationships can be built right here at Texas Tech, and you're going to be building something that they want to shop with forever.
That's awesome. And the second half of what you were talking about is like, in essence, introducing new products, new menu items to the students can be a challenge because they're
Mhm.
so they're used to what they
Yeah.
like and how they like it. But you're saying like we can actually run digital campaigns, social campaigns as a way to kind of introduce when we do have new items and kind of make it fun and flavorful. You talked about the hot honey. In my mind, I'm like, there's probably a social campaign in the 80s where it was Pepsi versus Coke,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
they did these little tests, right? And it was just a way to kind of maybe open the door and let a Gen Z customer know like there's something else that you might want to try, and this is actually really phenomenal. So I guess my question is, how often do campaigns actually carry over and you're introducing, promoting new food items?
So, from a campaign standpoint, we do special events on campus every semester. We've probably got I don't know, hold me to this number, 15 to 20 special events, and these aren't specifically vendors coming in. These are line switch ups that we're promoting to what we call a multicultural event.
Okay.
So, for example, this last semester we did Chinese New Year. The semester before that, in the fall, we brought Diwali on campus. We do Mardi Gras. We do. I think next week we're having a giant pretzel day. It's all New York themed, but we do like these theme lines, these special events throughout the entire semester. And these multicultural events are some things that we really take a lot of pride in. 2 weeks ago, probably more than that, April 5th is the event date. We brought in a James Beard Award winner, Chef De La Vega from Austin, Texas, and she did a phenomenal job of bringing authentic Mexican food to campus. And basically, when we do these special events, we want to see what's working. We want to bring some excitement to our menus. We want to bring new things. And as I said in the beginning of the podcast, food is a language everybody speaks, but you've may not have had the chance to try this food. So, an example of something that we've brought to campus from one of these is the massive success of our Diwali event in tikka masala. And when we brought that on campus, it's always done really, really well. So now we have 2 to 3 different units on campus serving that almost every day on their line, or at least on a rotating menu every week, where we were able to introduce this new plate, this new cuisine at a special event. And we saw great numbers with it, and we saw a lot of excitement with it. And so it's something that is on our menu every day now. It's something that we're going to continue serving because kids love it. So something that wasn't necessarily there that we've brought in permanently.
That's awesome. And just kind of spin off of that, 1923, that was the year Texas Tech founded.
It was.
So this is the 100-year anniversary. There's some events. And you had mentioned before we started, you've got food baked into the 100-year anniversary of the institution.
It's a big deal for us. Obviously, we have a full year of celebrating 100 years, the centennial for Texas Tech. Well, a big part of hospitality services is our catering department, top tier catering, and it means the world to us when the university as a whole is doing something of this magnitude. They're having a huge event this Saturday, and we're called to put on this event. We're called to plate this event, to have probably one of the fanciest meals that I've ever seen personally. But in our studio, we're photographing this plate that our chefs have put together, and it looks amazing. And probably by the time this comes out, the event will have come and gone. But huge name bands going to be coming in and playing for under 1,000 people. Probably haven't done that since before they made it big time. And when we think about this 100-year anniversary, it's not always something somebody's going to think of. Oh yeah, hospitality is a part of Texas Tech, but we play a big role in everyone's life here at Texas Tech. And if we're doing our job correctly, then nobody probably knows our name because you want to be fed well. And for 100 years, it's been self-op, and we're really, really proud of that. And so the 100-year anniversary for us is a milestone.
That's fantastic. I hope there's lots of homemade Rice Krispies ready to go.
Yep. That and burritos, I hear, is going to be on the menu for your takeaway gift to go home. So that's going to be exciting as well. Our catering department does a very, very good job.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you for talking about all these things. Now, I just got to ask you about Blue Cedar Productions.
Sure.
Just help us. So this is a side project, a side hobby. It's a business that you run. What is Blue Cedar?
So, since I was in college, I like I said, I've had a camera in my hand since I was in junior high, and it's always been something that was more like fun than work for me, and I think it still remains that to this day. It's why I do it so much. What I do for Texas Tech is a big part of me, but what I do for Blue Cedar is completely on the side. It's not connected hardly in any way, besides me, being employed at both places. But I do a lot of production work for weddings. I do a lot of portraits, but really, what Blue Cedar, like what I love to do with that company is I make small documentaries for nonprofit organizations that wouldn't have that marketing money to begin with, but they have amazing stories to tell. So weddings and portraits and everything else, while I love doing that part of the job, it really pays the bills for me to be able to tell these other stories. It's something I'm really, really proud of. The last one we put out is we're still working on it. We're going to have a part 2 coming out, but we had a Noah's Mark one, and it's a guy that runs ultra marathons, and he raises money per mile that he's running, and they do an amazing job over there. And that Blue Cedar is something it's just me. My wife is probably tired of watching videos at this point, but that's really the only other support that I have is her saying, yeah, it was good. Or, you maybe work on that a little bit more, but it's something that I really do truly love.
Very good. Well, Evan Wilson, manager of social media and content creation at the Texas Tech University Dining Program.
Yep.
Phenomenal stuff. Give him a follow. Evan, thank you for joining us today. Well done. Excited to keep learning and seeing what you're doing in the future.
I really, really enjoyed today. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining this episode of Pass the Tots. We look forward to conversing more in the future. We'll see you next week.